I knew something was off the second I saw the orange cones lining the road in front of my house. Not the kind the county uses. These were shiny new, the kind you rent from a private contractor. And behind them was a crew of guys in yellow vests unloading a steel gate from a flatbed trailer. I stepped off my porch and walked straight toward them. "Hey," I called out, "what's going on here?" One of the workers glanced at me. "Installing a gate, sir. Got a work order from the HOA." I blinked. "This is a public county road, you can't gate this," he shrugged. "We're just doing what the paperwork says, of course." This had Karen written all over it. And not just any Karen. Rochelle Naylor, president of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association and self-declared guardian of community purity. Middle-aged, sharp bob haircut, lips always pursed like she just smelled something unpleasant. She had it out for me ever since I refused to pay a fine for leaving my trash can out for too long, a whole 20 minutes past pickup. I marched up the street, past the crew and straight to the HOA office. It used to be a daycare, now it's Rochelle's lair. She was inside, of course, tapping away on her laptop like she was managing national security. "Rochelle," I said, not bothering to knock. "What's this about a gate?" She looked up slowly, like I was a child interrupting recess. "Hello, Jackson, it's a security measure. The board has authorized a gate across the east end of Willow Creek Drive, too much traffic cutting through from the highway." "It's a county road," I said. "You can't just gate it off." "Yes, we can," she replied, voice sugary and smug. "We've already voted, it's for the safety of our residents." "If you want to lodge a complaint, you can submit it in writing." I stared at her. "Did you get a permit from the county?" She blinked. "Just once. It's within our authority." "Rochelle, it's not. That road's on the county's maintenance list. It's public access." She waved a hand like she was swatting a fly. "We'll see what the county says when they realize how dangerous it's become. I've already emailed Councilman Price." I didn't need to argue. I had a better idea. I drove straight to the county road department and asked to speak with someone in right-of-way enforcement. A guy named Dale met me out front. I showed him the photos I took: cones, equipment, the gate, all of it. "That's illegal," he said immediately. "They didn't file anything with us." "That's a major violation." I grinned. "Thought so. Can you do something about it?" "Oh, we'll do more than that," Dale said, already dialing someone. "They're going to wish they hadn't touched a single inch of that road." By the time I got back home, the crew had finished installing the posts and were halfway through hanging the gate. I sat on my porch, coffee in hand, and waited. 45 minutes later, 2 county trucks rolled in. Bright yellow, lights on. Rochelle came storming out of the HOA office like she was about to stop a hostage situation. "You can't be here," she shouted at the county workers. Dale stepped out of the lead truck, holding a clipboard. "Ma'am, this is a county-maintained road. You've installed an unauthorized barrier. We're removing it now." "You can't, this is private property," Rochelle snapped. "No, ma'am, it's not, and the fine for obstructing a public right-of-way, that's gonna land squarely on your HOA's budget." Her face went pale. Dale turned to his crew. "Cut it down." The sound of metal grinding against asphalt carried for blocks. Neighbors stepped out of their homes, some in slippers, others holding mugs or folding arms across pajama tops, watching as the county crew used a rotary saw to slice clean through the steel gates mounting brackets. Sparks flew. Rochelle stood rigid on the HOA office steps, jaw clenched, arms stiff by her sides. She didn't say a word now. Just watched as her shiny new monument to control was dismantled piece by piece. Dale didn't gloat. He didn't need to. He handed one of the workers a printed order and pointed toward the gate's steel posts. "Cut flush with the curb. We're not leaving trip hazards." By the time the crew loaded the final segment onto their truck, a deputy sheriff's cruiser had pulled up behind them. Not lights on urgent, just enough presence to make it clear this wasn't just a bureaucratic wrist slap. The deputy walked over, nodded at Dale, then turned to Rochelle. "You're Rochelle Naylor?" he asked. Her voice came out tight. "Yes. I've got a report from the road commission." You authorized the installation of a gate across a public thoroughfare without county approval. That's a serious civil infraction. You'll be receiving a citation. You'll also need to appear before the Municipal Code Enforcement Board." She looked at him like he'd spoken a different language. "I'm the president of the HOA. We have authority to protect our neighborhood." "Not over county infrastructure, you don't," the deputy said. "And especially not when it impedes emergency access routes. You're lucky this didn't delay a fire truck or ambulance. Then we'd be having a different conversation." He handed her a folded citation slip and walked back to his cruiser without another word. I stayed seated on the porch, letting the moment settle. As the county trucks rumbled away and the neighbors began drifting back into their homes, I noticed someone lingering near my mailbox. Short guy, maybe mid-40s, wore a windbreaker with a faded real estate logo on the chest. He had a clipboard and a camera slung across his shoulder. "You Jackson?" he asked. "Yeah, who's asking?" "Name's Travis, Code Compliance Investigator. County sent me to document the aftermath. Mind if I take a few photos from your yard? Got a better angle on the curb cut." "Go ahead," I said, motioning toward the sidewalk. He snapped a few shots, then walked back over. "You know, this isn't the first time your HOA's pushed past legal boundaries. We've had complaints from this subdivision before. Unauthorized surveillance cameras on street poles, unpermitted tree removals. But this gate. That's the first time they crossed into outright obstruction of public access. You did the right thing reporting it." "I figured someone had to," I said. Travis gave a short nod. "Well, it's going to trigger a full audit. Once we start digging, we usually find more. You might want to keep an eye on your bylaws, or better yet, your budget reports. If they used association funds for this install, that's misappropriation." That night, I pulled out the last annual budget report the HOA had mailed. It was glossy, full color, with vague line items like security improvements and infrastructure enhancements. No receipts, no contractor names, no breakdowns. And there, buried near the bottom, was a lump sum labeled East Entrance Fortification, $28,400. I snapped a photo and emailed it to Travis along with a short note. "Found this under last year's budget. Thought it might help." 2 days went by before I heard anything else. Then on a quiet Thursday morning, my doorbell rang. It was Marcy, who lived 3 houses down. She was holding a folder and looked like she hadn't slept. "We need to talk," she said. I let her in. She sat on the couch and opened the folder. "I've been the HOA secretary for 4 years. Rochelle handles most of the decisions, but I've seen what she's been doing. Inflated maintenance contracts, kickbacks from landscaping companies, even paid her nephew to consult on architectural compliance. And this gate, she pushed it through in a closed meeting. No board vote. No community input." I leaned forward. "You have proof?" Marcy pulled out a printed email chain. "Here's the contractor quote she approved, and here's the check stub made out from the HOA account to a company called Naylor Property Enhancements. That's her husband's LLC." My eyebrows went up. "That's fraud," she nodded. "That's why I'm here. I'm done covering for her. I want this HOA cleaned out." I stood and walked to the kitchen. Grabbed my laptop, opened a fresh folder, and started scanning the documents she brought. We organized everything: check stubs, meeting notes, emails, bank statements. By the time Marcy left, we had enough to fill a binder. I emailed everything to Travis and copied the county's fraud investigation unit. Within 24 hours, he responded. There would be a formal hearing before the county ethics board the following week, and it wouldn't be private. The news spread fast. By Saturday, several residents had started gathering signatures for a special election to remove the board. Others began sharing stories, fines for imaginary violations, threats over fence paint, even forced removal of holiday decorations 2 days after Christmas. Then came the envelope. It was slid under my door in the middle of the night. No stamp, no name. Inside was a single page typed, no header. It read, "Back off, this isn't your business. People get hurt when they dig too deep." I called it in immediately. The deputy who arrived took the letter seriously. He wore plain clothes and carried a notepad, but the way he scanned my porch lights and checked the bushes told me he wasn't new to threats. "Any cameras?" he asked. "Two on the driveway, one above the garage," I said. He followed me inside as I pulled up the footage. At 2:37 in the morning, a figure in a hoodie approached from the south side, careful to avoid the streetlights. They stayed in the shadows, stepped onto my porch, and slipped the envelope under the door before jogging back toward the cul-de-sac. "Not the smartest move," the deputy said. "That's enough to open a case for intimidation." "I'm not backing down," I said. "Didn't think you would," he replied. "We'll let you know what we find." Sunday brought something unexpected, a knock on my door from Rochelle's vice president, Howard. He always looked exhausted, like he was one meeting away from a breakdown. "I didn't know about the gate," he said before I could speak. "She told us it was approved. I believed her. But now county's investigating and I might be liable if I don't make a statement." "Then make one," I said. Publicly, he hesitated. "It's not just about the gate. There's a lot more. She's been hiding financial records from the board. Changed the password to the HOA email. We haven't had a real vote in over 6 months. You want help?" I asked. He nodded. "Then you're going to testify," I said. "And bring every document you can get your hands on." He looked down at the welcome mat, then back at me. "I'll do it." I'm done being her puppet. By Monday, the county posted a public notice. Due to evidence of financial misconduct, a temporary operational freeze had been placed on the Willow Creek HOA. Rochelle was suspended from her role pending the outcome of the hearing. A forensic audit would begin within 72 hours, and finally, the community breathed. People smiled as they passed each other on the sidewalk. Kids played without being told their bikes were clutter. Someone even put a garden gnome in their front yard, a quiet act of rebellion that stood like a statue of liberty. But I knew the storm wasn't over yet. Rochelle wasn't the type to go quietly. And if she'd gone this far, she might still have cards left to play. What she didn't know was that we had more than documents now. We had witnesses. We had investigators. And we had momentum. Howard arrived at my door again the next day, this time with a canvas grocery bag clutched in both arms. He looked like he hadn't eaten or slept, cheeks hollowed, shirt half tucked. Without waiting for an invitation, he stepped inside and placed the bag on my dining table. It landed with a dull thud. "What's in there?" I asked. "Hard copies," he said, unzipping the top. "Contracts, bank statements, even board meeting recordings." She never deleted anything, just renamed folders and hoped no one would look. I pulled out the first folder. Inside was a vendor invoice labeled Perimeter Monitoring Enhancements, dated from 3 months back. The amount was over $12,000. The vendor listed was a shell company, no address, just a P.O. box. I flipped the page. There was a deposit slip made out to Rochelle's personal account. "She funneled HOA payments straight into her own bank," I said. Howard nodded. "That's not the half of it." He passed me a stack of printed emails. One subject line caught my eye: "Election interference strategy." I read through it. Rochelle had been instructing another board member, Todd Kramer, to delay the quarterly meeting notices until after the deadline for nominations. It ensured that no new candidates could legally run for board positions. "She rigged the last election," I said, stunned. "And the 3 before that," Howard said. "She's kept every rival off the ballot for nearly 5 years. I opened a USB flash drive he had tucked in the bottom of the bag and plugged it into my laptop. The folder was labeled Audio. There were over 40 recordings. I clicked one at random, a meeting from last November. Rochelle's voice came through, sharp and deliberate. "We don't need every homeowner knowing what we approve. If they had any idea what's in the reserve fund, they'd start asking questions." A male voice hesitated. "But the bylaws require a quarterly report. I'll handle the bylaws," she snapped. "I've got Councilman Price on speed dial. No one's going to touch us." I paused the recording. "That's enough to trigger a state-level investigation," I said. Howard exhaled. "That's why I brought it here." I don't just want her off the board, I want her prosecuted. I forwarded the files to the county's white-collar crimes unit. Within hours, I got a response. A detective named Lynette Harrow called me directly, her tone brisk but focused. Your submission includes evidence of fraudulent elections, embezzlement, and falsification of public documents, she said. We're coordinating with the district attorney. You may be called to testify. I'll be there, I said without hesitation. The next morning, 2 black government subs rolled into the neighborhood. They parked at the curb in front of the HOA office. Rochelle was inside. I watched from my window as 2 plainclothes officers stepped out and entered the building. They were in there for 20 minutes. When they emerged, Rochelle was between them, wrists cuffed behind her back. She didn't scream, didn't plead, just stared straight ahead as they guided her into the vehicle. A few residents stood in their driveways, watching in silence. That same afternoon, a temporary receiver was appointed by the county to take over HOA operations. A notice was delivered door to door, informing residents that the association's financial activities were under criminal investigation. All accounts were frozen. All board members were suspended pending background checks. That evening, I met with a few neighbors in my driveway. One of them, a nurse named Julia, brought over a stack of letters violation notices she'd received over the past year. Everyone had been signed by Rochelle personally. Fines for things like improper mailbox flag angle and excessive lawn ornamentation. $300 for a flamingo, she said, holding up the letter. I paid it. I was scared they'd put a lien on my house. You weren't alone, said Mike, a retired Army mechanic. They threatened to foreclose on me over a missing shutter. We spread the letters out on my truck bed, dozens of them, all handwritten, all citing non-existent bylaws. These are illegal, I said. Every one of them. Over the next several days, more residents came forward. A young couple produced photos of their car being towed from their own driveway by an HOA-hired company. A disabled veteran had been fined for installing a wheelchair ramp without aesthetic compliance approval. A single mother showed us a letter threatening legal action if her teen son parked his bike on the front porch. Each story added another piece to the puzzle. Rochelle hadn't just skimmed money, she'd weaponized the HOA to control, intimidate, and profit. Then came the forensic audit report. The county released it to all residents by mail. Inside were the full findings, over $200,000 misappropriated over 5 years. Funds spent on luxury spa retreats, private security for Rochelle's home, and personal travel disguised as association site inspections. The report also revealed that Rochelle had set up a private email server to conduct HOA business, bypassing all transparency requirements. Over 200 messages were recovered, many of them ordering board members to fabricate violations or ignore legitimate maintenance requests in lower-income corners of the neighborhood. The final page of the audit listed the criminal charges being filed: wire fraud, election tampering, embezzlement, obstruction of justice, and criminal conspiracy. At the emergency town hall meeting held in the community center, a county representative stood at the podium while the hall filled beyond capacity. Folding chairs had to be brought in from nearby churches. Effective immediately, the representative announced, the Willow Creek HOA will be placed under county supervision until a new election can be held under state oversight. All prior fines issued without proper legal basis are nullified. Applause erupted across the room. We also want to thank the residents who brought this to our attention, the representative added, particularly Mr. Jackson Cole, who provided critical evidence and testimony. I wasn't expecting it, but people turned in their seats and looked at me. Some clapped. A few stood. I just gave a quiet nod, not entirely sure what to do with the attention. After the meeting, the county official approached me. There's one more thing, she said. We're recommending that several board members be permanently barred from serving on any HOA in the state. Howard, I asked. He's not on the list. He cooperated fully and triggered the investigation. We may ask him to serve as interim president until new elections can be held. I stepped outside into the night air. The community center lights glowed behind me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to look over my shoulder when I walked down the sidewalk. A few days later, I passed by Rochelle's house. It was dark. A notice from the sheriff's department was taped to the door: property under investigation, no entry permitted. The new interim board led by Howard set up a public forum in the park. No podiums, no microphones, just folding tables, open books, and residents freely asking questions. For the first time, the HOA was transparent. Julia brought her flamingo back out and planted it proudly in her yard. Mike painted his garage door fire engine red just because he could. Kids rode scooters across sidewalks that had once been patrolled like military zones. And me? I installed a bench at the end of my driveway, right where the gate had once tried to cut our street in half. On it, I carved one word: ours. Howard stood in the middle of the community park, clipboard in one hand, sweat darkening the collar of his shirt. The crowd had doubled since the first forum. Folding chairs were gone. People brought camp chairs, coolers. Some even set up shade tents. It wasn't a protest anymore. It was a reckoning. "I've got the full list of proposed reforms," he said, raising his voice over the hum of conversation. "We're eliminating closed-door meetings, requiring full digital access to financial records, and setting term limits for all board positions. No more shadow governance." A woman near the front, older with thick silver curls and a paisley scarf tied around her neck, stepped forward. "Are you planning to disclose where every dollar went, including the missing reserve funds?" Howard didn't hesitate. "Every cent." "We're working with a forensic accountant from the county's fraud unit. Once the audit is complete, it'll be mailed to every homeowner and posted online." Someone asked about the vacant properties Rochelle had quietly purchased through shell buyers. Another neighbor shouted out a question about the maintenance crew that never showed up but still billed the HOA monthly. Howard answered everyone, sometimes flipping through folders, sometimes just speaking plainly. I watched from the back, arms crossed, leaning against the oak tree near the basketball court. I wasn't part of the board, didn't want to be, but I made sure to stay involved. Not because I wanted control, because I didn't trust anyone with it anymore. Later that night, I got a knock on my door from Detective Harrow. She wore a navy windbreaker with the county seal and carried a thick accordion folder under one arm. "We've got something," she said, stepping inside. I cleared the dining table, and she laid out a series of documents: loan applications, notarized forms, and internal emails pulled from Rochelle's private server. These properties she bought under aliases. They were financed with fraudulent lien claims. She filed fake violations against homeowners who were behind on dues, then forced them into quick sales through intimidation, often buying the homes herself or through proxies at reduced prices. I stared at one of the emails. It had Rochelle's name in the digital signature, authorizing a lien against a home that had been fully paid off. "This is mortgage fraud." "Worse," Harrow said. "In one case, she filed a lien against a deceased veteran's property, then forged a quitclaim deed to transfer ownership. Sold it 3 months later for a profit." I sat down. "That's grand larceny." 24 counts of it," she confirmed. "We arrested her husband this morning. He's been laundering proceeds through his landscaping business, bought a vacation home near Destin 2 years ago. Paid cash." It felt surreal. This woman, who once fined people for having mismatched patio chairs, was now looking at federal charges, but the deeper they dug, the more they found. "I'm going to need you in court," Harrow added. "You're listed in the state's case as the initial whistleblower." "I'll testify," I said. That same week, a federal grand jury returned indictments, not just against Rochelle, but 3 other board members who had signed off on fraudulent expenditures. One of them had fled to Arizona, but the U.S. Marshals picked him up within 48 hours. The charges ranged from racketeering to wire fraud, and the total estimated theft exceeded $400,000. The media caught wind quickly. A local journalist from Channel 7 News contacted me for an interview. I initially declined, but after seeing the way they'd covered similar HOA corruption cases, I agreed on the condition that they focus on the community, not just the drama. The segment aired the next week. It showed residents reclaiming their spaces, painting fences, planting gardens, even organizing a weekend cookout called Freedom from Fines. Kids decorated sidewalks with chalk drawings of dragons and spaceships without anyone barking at them to stop. One man built a little free library at the edge of his lawn, stocked with mystery novels and kids' picture books. At the end of the piece, the reporter looked into the camera and said, "In Willow Creek, justice didn't come with torches and pitchforks but with patience, persistence, and one very stubborn homeowner who asked the right questions." I got a lot of handshakes after that. A few people sent me pies. One woman knitted me a scarf with the words "No gate here" stitched across it in block letters. The new HOA elections were held a month later. For the first time, ballots were counted publicly, and candidates had to disclose campaign statements and financial ties. Howard was voted in as president, but he made it clear he wasn't staying more than a year. "I'm here to fix it, not keep it," he said. The new treasurer was a retired CPA named Linda who had once been fined for having wind chimes. She brought spreadsheets to every meeting and insisted on reading every line item aloud until people begged her to stop, but no one complained. Not anymore. The county began using our case in training seminars for neighborhood governance. We even got invited to speak at a municipal conference about preventing HOA abuse. Howard went. I didn't. I stayed home and worked on building a new porch swing. Then one morning, a white envelope showed up in my mailbox. It had the county seal and a return address from the district court. Inside was a check restitution from the seized assets of Rochelle and her co-conspirators. It wasn't much, just a few $100s, but it came with a letter acknowledging my role in exposing the fraud. I tucked the check into a drawer and hung the letter in a frame near my front door. A few weeks later, I saw Julia pushing her daughter in a stroller down the sidewalk. She waved and stopped to talk. "You see, they finally replaced the street signs," she asked. "No more peeling paint or bent metal. The county did it last week." I nodded. "Looks better. Feels better too," she said. "Whole place just breathes easier." She continued down the street and I stood there looking at the new sign, Willow Creek Drive, no fake gates, no orange cones, no secret meetings or threats scribbled on printer paper, just a clean street. Quiet again. Peaceful. I walked back up to my porch and sat down on the swing I'd finished the day before. It creaked slightly as I leaned back, the breeze carrying the distant sound of hammers and saws neighbors fixing up things they used to be afraid to touch. I pulled out my phone and opened the community app. The new board had posted a poll asking residents what they wanted to do with the old HOA office. Ideas ranged from a daycare to a co-op garden. I voted for the garden. Then I put the phone away, leaned back, and listened as the wind moved through the trees uninterrupted, unmonitored, and finally, free.